I am back from my trip and it's time to do some building. I'm gonna skip over the pleasantries for the beginning of this video because we have a lot of work to do. So here's the plan. I have exactly 1 week to make this video and I'm hoping to complete not only this entire side of the rock face but also working a little bit on the back. You can see just peeking around the corner there. So yeah, we've got a lot of work to do. Now, I actually did a teensy bit of work in between episodes just while I was kind of sitting around doing nothing, and that was just this little bit of connector and kind of building up some structure over here, but we'll get into that in a little bit. So I'm going to record this video a little bit differently, and we're gonna go by a day-by-day basis, and we have exactly 1 week to complete this, so we shall see how it goes. Now, a few other things that I did do while I was away. I designed part of the bridge, or rather, I took a design from the Lego treehouse and just kind of looked at it and decided if it was good or not, so we might work on the bridges in this episode. I also worked on the kind of building and structure and walls of the houses that are going to be going up on top of this cliff, as well as working out a couple of color schemes for those houses. So they should be looking decently good by the end of this video. I think that's it for this intro, so let's get into it. To start off the day, I decided that I would crack on with rounding out the edge of the cliffs here. And let me tell you, this took a really long time. So rounding off the edges and trying to get everything connected always takes longer than I expected, but this was just absolutely absurd. I think this took me like 5 hours to do, which is frankly ridiculous. Since I was getting so frustrated with how little progress was being made, I decided to commit a crime. I think you can see where this is going.
Oh yeah, get that all over there.
I then proceeded to hot glue a couple of pieces to the cracks that were causing me a bunch of difficulty, and I have to say that my experience with Lego and hot glue is that they do not mix, but if you're careful about it, it actually does not really damage the parts, and this section does look a lot better with those hot glued parts.
Well, I guess it's not 100% Lego anymore, but if you're mad at me, there's something called the comments.
Okay, moving away from that experience, the next step that I had to do was build out some of the wire work and framework structure, so that was decently easy. It did take a little bit of time because I actually have to figure out the shaping of the cliffs, but it was a lot more fun than trying to deal with random cracks that I had no idea how to fix. Now that I have this framework structure in place, I am feeling a lot better about building out the rest of this side. And now that we're done this annoying section here where we have to curve it around, I think I'm ready to move on. So it's time to start Day 2. Today was shaping up to be quite a grindy session, so yeah, we have a lot of cliffs to build, makes sense, and I know it's a recurring theme, and obviously we're building a mountain, so we're gonna have a lot of cliffs to build. And trust me, I know it's a very long process. So I think for the majority of today, I'm just gonna let you guys sit back and enjoy this time lapse. Now, one interesting thing that I did learn is how to pan a camera during a time lapse, so I guess enjoy that. We are reaching the end of day 2 here, and the reason that I haven't been able to do too much work and that we've only gotten this little section done here is firstly because I first have to plan it all out, but secondly because that planning takes a really long time. So just turning the camera down here, I've been having some issues with the design and how all the shaping's going to work out, so you may have seen slightly in the time lapse that I was going back and forth between using like this and like a bunch of other things, so I've got to figure that out. I think I'm going to end the day here though, because it is getting kind of late and I probably should just go to bed and think about it overnight and that sort of thing and come back to it with a fresh set of eyes tomorrow. So not bad for a second day, but honestly I don't think we're off to a very good start, so hopefully that's going to change. The third day was shaping up to be very similar to the second day, so I honestly don't know how to make this very interesting other than a time lapse, so I guess let's go ahead and do another time lapse. I mean, they're fun, right? No, they are not. And to the one person who wanted to see that time lapse, there are plenty in this video. But let's do something slightly more interesting than watching another time lapse. And that thing is a doggo and a pole. Or at least it will be a pole after I show you these designs. So on the left side of your screen, you can see some of the gradients and colors that I figured out in Studio using some Lego parts and the Lego colors. And on the right side, you can see me at Mumbo's base in Hermitcraft. So I guess we'll go over to the front here, and you can see this is kind of the first house on the block. It's got that red color scheme with that kind of brown edging, and you can see we have that color in Lego there. So yeah, I've just gone through most of these houses here, at least all the ones on this section of the cliff, and I've basically just tried to match the colors as closely as possible to some of the Lego colors. As mentioned in the start of the video, these are the kind of like color gradients that I'm talking about. I know it may slightly look confusing to you and how I've laid them out in the different colors, but it makes sense to me. Such as all of the sand green parts that you see at the top, those are just to signify the kind of glow like in here, so that I know that I have to order some parts that will kind of have that color. With all of those color schemes worked out, we should be in a fairly good position to start working out what parts to order, because we now know the colors. Now jumping into the unrendered version in Studio, you can see there we have all the color gradients, and over here are 3 designs that I have worked out for walls. Now, to get a better idea of how these look, here are a couple of rendered out versions, and obviously they look better because they're rendered out, but this is where the pole comes into place. So this right here is option 1, this is option 2, and this is option 3. Pretty straightforward. Now, there are a couple more options that I didn't build out over here, so there are some pictures of that from other people's design, and now there are a couple of other options as well that I still have to kind of look into and work out, but I think these are the 3 main ones that I want to go with. Now, the one on the left here is the most simple. It's just using classic like brick stacking along with a couple of snot parts to get these little pieces on the side there, but other than that, it's really quite simple, just uses a couple of those textured bricks. And so this one will be the simplest, fastest, and easiest to build, so it's definitely a good option. It just doesn't have the level of detail that we might want from these builds. And now I say we because you guys are going to play a huge role in deciding which one, because honestly, I don't really care. Like, this one looks good and is probably the best one to do because it's the fastest, but then like these ones look a lot better in terms of their detail. So this one over here is just using the technique of using those jumper plates along with whatever these kind of rail pieces are, so then it jets out and gives that super nice, really subtle texture of bricks on the side there. And I even managed to include a couple of snot pieces sticking out there, so that managed to get a little bit of a different kind of textured look in there. Now, the final one here is definitely the most complicated. I mean, just by looking at it, you can see that these parts are upside down, these parts are right side up. It's all kind of flippy and all over the place. And how I pulled that off is by using bars in the back. So this is an amazing technique for doing that. And surprisingly, I think it's actually the most structurally stable. So if we check out the stability warnings here, yeah, you can see this one's actually fairly stable, and this one is actually fairly unstable, which is actually a surprise. I would have guessed that this one here, using a bunch of tiles, would be the least stable, but I guess that's not the case. So this wall definitely looks fantastic, and I think if I did do this one, I would incorporate a couple of things from the previous ones, like using a couple of snot bricks here and there just to add that extra level of detail of parts sticking out to the side, and I may want to even try doing a couple of slopes, but we'll see how that goes. So those are your options, 1, 2, 3. If I can do a poll, then I'll have one in the top corner of this video. If not, you guys can just go into the comments and say which one, or maybe you want a mix of like 2 or all 3, or really, I don't know. Just leave your suggestions in the comments and which one you would like to see. So with that being covered, let's go see what I managed to complete. Yes, it's day 4. I forgot to record the update at the end of day 3, so here we are now. In terms of how this section of wall came out and progress, I'm actually quite pleased. I really like how this kind of green section came out here. I did know that I needed to do a little bit more of this kind of style of building where the green kind of comes down multiple levels instead of just, staying at one flat level across the entire rock face. And this does also look a little bit more realistic. And I don't know, there's just something really pleasing about seeing this kind of stripe of green come down here. And then we'll have to work out the rest of the wall from there. But other than that, the entirety of this wall is looking to be quite good. And since it is taking quite a long time, I am contemplating the idea of just kind of sloping it off to the edge here and then just cutting it off with a flat wall. We do that further down the rock face, but I'm just wondering maybe I should bring it up a little bit closer so then I don't have to spend as much time on all of this detail that really isn't that important. But for now, I guess we'll just continue on our grind with the rocks. Now at the start of this 7-day challenge, I was thinking, oh yeah, I'll for sure get all of this side done and probably like a good quarter of the rock face over there done as well. Now I am just going to be happy if we get this section done. So I definitely think we can, but I don't think we'll make too much progress on the other side, but we'll see how it goes. So the first thing that we have to do with any planning and with any rock face building, of course, is to line out the details and the structure work. So that's what I did first here. And then from there, we can just fill in the framework, and it's a lot easier than just trying to figure it out and place down a bunch of random parts. Now, I think for the rest of day 4 and for day 5 here, we are just going to do one mega time lapse. So if you want to skip over that, there is a timestamp up on screen. But for the rest of you, including that one time lapse enjoyer out there, enjoy the time lapse. Well, that went well, except for the fact that I made a mistake. And that mistake was I didn't notice how close of a gap really was in between these two kind of jutting out parts. It does look kind of cool with that really small trench in there, but I have been consulting the image here and you can see there is a much larger space in between the two, and I'm just worried that maybe if we have it here, then we might not be able to fit the correct position of the houses on top. So I'm just gonna shove this entire thing over by 3 studs, so it shouldn't be too big of a deal. We're just moving a couple of those base parts, but it is a mistake nonetheless, and it is kind of... Oh, I got the hiccups. Anyways, it's kind of annoying nonetheless, so yeah, I've got to move that, but it shouldn't be too big of a deal. Now, despite that semi-bad news, there is also some good news. We have a Bricklink order that came in. So I think I know what's inside this order. It should just be a bunch of green parts and that sort of manner, so then we can do some of the shaping and stuff on top of the cliffs. But yeah, I think that's what's in this order. So sliding it open here, you can see, yeah, it's a bunch of those wedges and stuff, so then we can do all of the sloping on the cliffs. So this will hopefully allow us to do a couple more of these kind of little platform areas and also be able to work on the top. So this is a pretty basic order in general. Now this was going to be a complementary order to another much more massive one that's hopefully arriving this week. But fingers crossed for that, but I don't know if it's going to arrive or not. This is me from the future. It doesn't. Now, I was able to scoot the entire thing over by a couple studs fairly quickly, so now I think it's time we did something a little bit different in day 5. Despite its title sequence, Day 5 was shaping up to be fairly straightforward as we were just building up more cliffs and trying to round them out. And I have to say, they are looking quite nice, and I really like the look of these double kind of bumps. So it was your usual going through and building up the cliffs and just trying to get all the shaping right, or at least it was going to be a normal day until a package arrived. Now we have been working a lot on the cliff, so I thought we'd switch it up a bit and work on the back section. Now what we are going to be working on is related to these little gaps that I created, I think it was last episode, and for that I received a package, and this package isn't actually Lego. So I think you can see where I'm going with this. The package is, of course, a bunch of LED lights, so this is going to help majorly with doing some lighting and stuff in this mock, and the main reason for that is that all of these lights are battery powered and have no wires at all, so they all have this kind of RGB remote control at the back, so then I can just literally take the remote, turn them on and off without having to reach in and find a switch, so I think that will make it a lot easier. When putting these lights behind these sections, I don't know if the signal is still going to reach with covering them all up with Lego, so we're going to have to do some testing on that, but I'm pretty sure that they'll still be able to work. We've got 10 of these LEDs here, and if I'm able to open it with one hand, that would be great. Otherwise, I'm going to have to set you guys down on a tripod, but I think I'm getting it here. And for some reason it comes with 2 remotes. Maybe one remote will turn on 5 of the lights and the other remote will turn on the other 5. But there we go, I got it open with only one hand, so I guess that's a success. And I think all we have to do to make these work is just screw them together, if I can also do this with one hand. And then they should just turn right on. I saw a little bit of flashing there. There we go. So there, it's probably not connected. Here, let me just set you down on a tripod. Okay, much better. You guys can actually see what's going on. So yeah, I think that's just the factory default. If we screw these lights together, they'll just start going into that flashing settings. And as you can see, they do have basically any color that I could want. So we can change the color, which will be super cool as well. So let's just grab, I think, 3 here to test. And if I grab the remote here, we should just be able to turn them off. Perfect, and back on. So yeah, that was looking great there, and then I think the main setting we'll use is either white or yellow, and oh, that actually works out perfectly because it's the single light in the middle instead of the 3 around the outside, so I think that should be able to fit quite nicely up on our mock. Now, if I did my measurements correct, they should just be able to sit basically right there. Now, I will have to put a little bit more support in place so they don't roll around, but that honestly should be it. I think I just can plunk those 3 lights right in there. And now the part that I ordered to cover them up hasn't arrived yet, so we're going to have to wait for that. But I think that's looking pretty good. So imagine that part up there covered, and it's going to light up this entire area down here, especially when it's all covered up. So I think that's going to look really nice. And again, with our remote here, we could probably change the mood or something and just like change it to blue. Okay, that all works. I was a little bit worried there that that one wasn't changing. And then to red and green, like we can play with some colors here and do some fun things, I think. I think there's even like some fade options so it changes colors, but that is a little bit overkill and we probably don't need it. The main ones is just on, off, and turn into white. So yeah, that is gonna be pretty great, I think. Come on, turn on. Turn on. So I just wanted to update you guys with our light situation here, but now that that's done, I think I'm just gonna go ahead and do a little bit of work on the cliffs in between days, and I'll see you all in.
Disaster has struck.
Despite that tragedy, we have an excellent start to day 6. So I was able to complete this entire section here, and I do quite like how it looks. I like these kind of double bump here, and I think it does look quite cool, and try and get a couple different angles so you can kind of see how much it bumps out and that sort of thing. But yeah, I quite like how this side is looking, and I do know this side probably doesn't need quite as much beauty treatment because it is kind of on the side and most people probably won't be looking at it. Now for you, this is just the start of day 6, but for me, just building up this section here already took more than half of the day, so bit of a mistake I made there. Didn't really record anything, but I think we can make up for it with doing out the rest. Now, I'm hoping today we can finish off the rest of all the cliffs on this side. So I think the best way to do this is in a series of jump cuts so that it is interesting and you guys get to see progress.
The final piece.
Yesterday, I was able to complete this entire side, and now it's looking absolutely fantastic, and we can now get these super awesome cinematic shots going all the way around this side of the rock. Now, of course, it is a little bit bittersweet because, yes, we did finish out all this rock, but I didn't even start on the other side. But not to worry, I about have 1 to 2 weeks left here in my Lego room, so hopefully in that time I'll be able to complete that rock face. Now, I know I'm going to have to really pick up my pace if I want to do that, but yeah, I'm really hoping to complete that side, or at least like 70 to 80% done that side. Now, in terms of the progress that I want to get done today, I wasn't actually planning to do too much because I have an absolute boatload. Like, I'm talking around 2 to 3 hours of footage to edit for this video. So that is going to be my main task today, is actually editing and uploading the video. But yeah, I'm thinking that we can probably do just a little bit of Lego on the top here. So I might grab a couple of like those green wedges and that sort of thing and just start trying to shape it out there. But otherwise, I am going to get over to my computer and start this super long editing process. So I think we're due for a super quick time lapse, and then let's finish this episode. In that short amount of time, I was able to put a super rough ring of green all along the outside of the top of the cliffs. So this is going to give us a base of where I want all the sloping to be. And I think this is actually getting close to a final result. Now, my plan with any of these weird connections that don't quite line up is obviously to probably just leave them like that, and then to cover them up with a bunch of leaves and stuff, just so then, you know, we cover up any wonkiness and that sort of thing, so then everything looks pretty nice and smooth all the way around. Now, that was actually a really good thing for me to do because I realized that down here, if you can barely see it, I am running out of these slopes and I need to order a couple more, so that will be a good thing to do while I'm building up the other side over there. So while I'm working on the back section, then I can order those parts and hopefully they'll arrive in time for that section to be done, and then we can start doing the greenery and the tops of each of these cliffs. So I'm thinking that's probably how it will go in the next couple of weeks. I'm going to move on to those cliffs next week, and then after that we can start to work on the tops of these things, start adding like the difference of heights, adding like where the houses are going to go and that sort of thing, and all the paths. So after the grind of the cliffs, we are going to have a lot of fun doing these top sections. But other than that, this is the end of the video, so I hope you enjoyed it. Please give me a like if you like this sort of style of video and this style of editing. And I think with all of that said, Gigahertz Productions out.